U.S. President-elect Donald Trump continues to assemble his team and has tapped Tom Homan to be his so-called border czar. Now, Homan served in the previous Trump administration, you'll remember, as acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. After the announcement, Homan said he would prioritize deporting immigrants in the United States who'd arrived illegally. Trump made cracking down on irregular immigration one of the central elements of his campaign, and he has promised mass deportations. So let's speak to Ethan Behrman, a political commentator and law professor, joining us live now from Los Angeles. Good day to you. So Donald Trump, he's chosen Tom Homan to be what he's calling his border czar. Can you tell us a little bit about what that tells us of what we can expect from this administration?
Well, that tells us that Donald Trump was very serious on the campaign trail about attempting to deport well over 10 million people from the United States. Tom Homan was the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Director under the first Trump term. He is the one that came up with the family separation policy, ripping children from their mother's arms, and has a very hard right view of how to handle people who do not have proper documentation.
So he's a real hardliner here. Is there any indication of what he might do once he takes up this post?
Yeah, I really think that what this indicates is they are going to be highly aggressive about rounding up people in the United States, using every means necessary in their view to literally round up 10 million people and get them out of the United States. They're going to be brutal about it. I see a lot of legal challenges coming, and they're going to leverage the military, the National Guard. He is close with Governor Greg Abbott in Texas, who seems to really enjoy using the National Guard along the border. So he's going to have cooperative governors in certain key border states as well.
Which will, of course, be a crucial element here. Ethan, stay with us, if you will. We can continue this conversation. I want to take a closer look first at some of the other people who are up for these most important positions that will affect geopolitics and international policy.
This man could be Donald Trump's chief of downsizing. Elon Musk is Trump's highest-profile supporter, and Trump has publicly spoken of putting him in charge of eliminating government waste, even as Musk does billions of dollars of official business with the U.S. Musk's unofficial influence is already significant. He's reportedly joined phone calls between Trump and foreign leaders. Then there's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., an outspoken vaccine skeptic who may head the Health and Human Services Department, raising worries about what could happen if another pandemic were to occur. Beyond the celebrities, Trump is looking to staff his administration with figures from the right. Rick Grenell is in the running for Secretary of State. He's a combative former ambassador to Germany who got involved in German politics while in his post. He's said he wants to empower right-wing, anti-establishment parties in Europe. Other names being floated are Robert O'Brien, who is Trump's former national security advisor, and Marco Rubio, senator from Florida. He's very hawkish against China.
But greater than it has ever been before.
For Secretary of Defense, Mike Rogers has been mentioned for the top job. He's a Republican member of Congress with a hawkish reputation, and unlike many in Trump's world, a strong advocate of arming Ukraine and increasing defense spending. Trump has also mentioned Christopher Miller, who worked under his last administration and was involved in Project 2025. Trump has announced that the United Nations ambassador is Elise Stefanik, a staunchly pro-Israel Republican representative from New York. Another major pick, Trump appointed his campaign co-chairwoman Susie Wiles as chief of staff. She'll control access to the president and help set the administration's policy agenda. What all these people have in common, besides right-wing credentials, is proven loyalty to Trump. But the president-elect faces obstacles in appointing these loyalists. Cabinet posts must be confirmed by the Senate, which means dealing with Democrats, who may refuse to let his nominees have hearings. Trump has proposed changing the way the Senate works to allow him to appoint candidates while it is not in session. Trump may resort to appointing acting cabinet members, as he often did in his first term, These people are easy to fire and don't have to be confirmed by the Senate. That makes their own views less important, as their jobs depend on one thing: pleasing the boss.
So, Ethan, a preview there of some of the faces we might be seeing quite a lot of in the years to come. I'd like to talk about Elise Stefanik. Trump's tapped her to be his ambassador to the United Nations. Is that a gift to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, pretty much anybody that Trump would pick for that role is going to be very much pro the current Israeli administration. This definitely is one of those key people to take over, as Elise Stefanik, as a congresswoman since 2015, in the last year or so, has been one of the most outspoken voices regarding the campus protests that have turned into violence at various times here in the United States, and is staunchly pro-Israel.
Indeed. Now, another crucial position that's going to be watched very closely, of course, is Secretary of State. Several names floating around. One of them is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. If that would indeed be the case, what would that tell you about the future Trump administration's foreign policy?
Well, I mean, what's interesting is Marco Rubio was a very traditional conservative until Donald Trump thoroughly defeated him in the primaries into the 2016 election, and he has slowly, what some of us would call, sold his soul to Donald Trump. And it's interesting because what Rubio would indicate is a soft on Russia, very hard on China, and likely very hard on Iran foreign policy. It's just very interesting to see what happens. Although I do have to at least comment here that the Biden administration maintained much of the Trump administration's tariffs against China in the first place. So the United States, across political parties, is becoming more and more tough on China.
Well, tell me a bit more about Marco Rubio. It's quite interesting if he comes from this more traditional conservative background, that perhaps some of the foreign policy positions he personally might not share with the more MAGA Republican brand that Trump represents.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be what is interesting to see play out. And that's a fundamental difference between the first Trump term, and this new yet to be second term. Is in the first term, Washington was still full of traditional conservative Republicans who hadn't bought into MAGA Trump world. And in the intervening years, the majority of Republicans in Congress now, I would even suggest a vast majority of those Republicans, are now pro-Trump, pro-MAGA. They've absolutely thrown away their traditional conservative values. And Marco Rubio just exemplifies that. And I think that is what is going to be fundamentally different in this second Trump term, is he is going to surround himself as exclusively as possible with pure loyalists, and not people like the generals Mattis, Milley, and Kelly, who might actually try and stand up to him and argue against him and rein him in. Mm-hmm. Now we have the great fear among the non-Trump supporters that it's just going to be yes from everybody serving Trump.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to Ethan Behrman, a political commentator and law professor, joining us today from Los Angeles.
Thank you, Claire, for having me.